So, if you watched AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, you might have noticed that AEW commentator Tony Schiavone took a couple of shots at Impact Wrestling during the broadcast. Now, Tony Schiavone took multiple storyline shots, I must say. It's not Tony Schiavone going rogue and shooting all over Impact Wrestling. These were all part of the storyline of AEW and Impact Wrestling, but he took multiple storyline shots at Impact on this week's episode of AEW Dynamite on TNT. Now, during Kenny Omega's entrance, of course, the AEW World Champion, but the man who has also been appearing on Impact Wrestling very regularly and aligned himself with Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis, during Kenny Omega's entrance ahead of the night's main event, AEW's commentator Tony Schiavone mentioned how he was, quote, glad that Kenny Omega helped Impact Wrestling's numbers go from one person to 6. Now, this dig came after one of Schiavone's earlier digs at the former TNA, where he poked fun at Impact's home network, stating, quote, it's hard to find Access TV, to the point where your smart TV asks why if you try and find it. These comments come one day removed after Schiavone's second consecutive appearance on Impact Wrestling, where he and AEW President Tony Khan popped up via another paid advertisement during this week's episode. There, Schiavone said, quote, he was glad he could be on cable access TV, and after the Impact was over, viewers could watch, quote, the latest city council meeting. So I think this is obviously the next step in the AEW versus Impact Wrestling storyline that they're doing, and this cross-promotion, and it's certainly, as I've mentioned before, it does seem to me like it is kind of the beginning of, these pot shots, if put it this way, if this was WWE and this was WWE in, say, the mid-2000s or the late 90s, these pot shots would say to you, maybe a month, 2 months' time, something big is going to happen between these two entities. I remember when I think about Raw vs. SmackDown back in 2005 and that initial brand warfare at Survivor Series that year. The build to that started weeks and weeks and weeks before, and it just started off with a couple of comments on commentary. So I think, when I think of that, and I think of what we've seen with Tony Schiavone's comments recently when it comes to Impact on AEW Dynamite last night, and some of the way that, like I said, the paid advertisement this past week by Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone on Impact Wrestling, it did feel more personal, and it did feel a bit more fiery. And I mentioned that when we spoke about it on Wednesday, that it did feel like there was something a little bit more, aggressive about it than we had done previously. The first paid ad was very much, oh, look at us, we're on Impact Wrestling. It's these two AEW guys, the AEW president, Tony Khan. We never see Tony Khan. First ever promo by Tony Khan. It kind of felt like that. It was a novelty and just kind of a wink and a nod to the relationship that was starting up between Impact and AEW. Now, with that paid advertisement and with Tony Schiavone's comments on AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, it does feel like there is something more. It does feel like there is something more. Now, you could say, is this just AEW's way of promoting Impact on AEW Dynamite? To be honest, I think AEW should promote Impact Wrestling more on Dynamite, and considering that the way that the night before on Access TV, and obviously the audience is very limited. I mean, the joke is kind of true, but the audience is very limited. But regardless, in those paid advertisements, they run through the entire card of Dynamite the following night. And when it comes to Dynamite on Wednesday, they don't really do that. The last couple of weeks, they haven't said, go watch Impact Wrestling on Access TV on Tuesday. The one time they did, at the end of the Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega, when Don Callis said, find out on Impact Wrestling on Access TV on Tuesday, they did their best ever number that they've ever done, Impact Wrestling on Access TV. So there is an argument, I suppose, that maybe AEW, maybe they do the same that Impact does for them on Tuesday. Maybe Impact with Scott D'Amore and Don Callis, they do a paid advertisement on TNT or something like that, or maybe they do some shots back. I don't know. But like I said before, when we've spoken about the Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone stuff, I actually really have enjoyed those paid advertisements. Like I said, the first one was good. I thought the second one this week was even better. I think it was really, really good, and it's quite scary actually how natural Tony Khan is at doing those promos. And I always love Tony Schiavone when he gets angry. I think Tony Schiavone's hilarious. If you've ever listened to his podcast or seen him outside of doing the commentary, he is a hilarious guy. So when he does those pot shots, it's great. And of course, Tony Schiavone, with one of the biggest disses in pro wrestling history, that'll put a lot of butts in seats when he's talking about Mick Foley winning the WWE Championship in 1998. And of course, how did that work out? So Schiavone's famous for it. So I don't know if they're trying to sort of bring up history by kind of doing a similar thing. I don't know. When I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about, okay, what could Impact do in response? And I was thinking, well, maybe Impact Wrestling, they can do a bit of a rebuttal. They can do it with Josh Matthews, and then Josh Matthews can throw some pot shots at AEW Dynamite on Impact Wrestling on Access TV on Tuesday. And then I just had to stop myself. I had to stop myself and go, oh no, that would be terrible, because the concern obviously would be that once Josh Matthews gets into character, he is insufferable. I mean, he is... Oh, it's talk about like X-Pac heat, they called it back in the day, and the King Corbin heat at the moment. Oh, it's not. People say, oh, he's over as a heel, people booing him and not liking him. That's a good thing, but to the point where you want to change the channel, and it's so insufferable. Michael Cole was the same during his whole coal mine stuff way back when, which actually I enjoyed looking back on it. I think it's hilarious, but some people really didn't like it. Josh Matthews, when he gets into character, is the same. He's a tough guy to deal with anyway, to be honest. I think he's a decent commentator. I don't think he's as good as he thinks he is. He thinks he's the best commentator in the world, which just, I mean, that really isn't the case. Nevertheless, once he really gets into that character, because he is a natural heel, once he really gets into that character, he is, I mean, you can barely watch the program. I think back to, was it 2017, and the whole stuff that when he had the feud with Jeremy Borash and all that kind of stuff, and all of the arguments he had backstage with Jeremy Borash, and all of it was just insufferable. I mean, he was just way over the top, and it was so annoying, and he's annoying anyway. So I was thinking, oh, I don't know actually about him doing pot shots back at Tony Schiavone, because that could get very annoying very, very quickly. And I know back in 2017, I know that Josh Matthews was a heel and that was the purpose of his character. But as I mentioned, it was the heel that made you really not want to watch the program. And even back then, and especially now, Impact needs all the viewers it can get. It doesn't need people turning off because they're going, oh, Josh Matthews, get rid of him. So he was just that kind of heel that made you not want to watch. So maybe actually we don't have Josh Matthews get involved, but maybe we could have, like I said, maybe we could have, I know, Scott D'Amore doing an advertisement during Impact Wrestling as well. Maybe you could have Tony Schiavone and Tony Khan show up and do another paid advertisement, and then Scott D'Amore just suddenly cuts in and goes, you know what, we don't need your money, we don't want your money, instead I'll cut a promo on you. And this time on TNT, he then has a paid advertisement, and he throws some shade at AEW Dynamite and throws some shade at diving out of the ring, says even your commentator Jim Ross doesn't like what he watches and all that kind of stuff. Do something like that? I think would be really interesting. We've seen the paid advertisements at this point by Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone. Now it's time to do something different. So maybe we do have a bit of a rebuttal of sorts. Maybe that could be a lot of fun. Like I said, when it comes to these pot shots and all this kind of stuff, potentially does this mean that we're getting an Impact Wrestling versus AEW pay-per-view? I don't know, or an Impact Wrestling versus AEW TV special. I say why not? Why not? At this point, anything's a possibility. I think if you look into the new year, obviously nothing's going to happen in the immediate future in the next couple of weeks, or we're in the holiday season, all that kind of stuff now. But once we get into 2021, anything's a possibility. The world hopefully might be going at least a little bit back to normal in the mid part of next year, we hope. Fingers crossed, Lord knows we hope it does. But I don't know anything's possible. Anything's possible. And if they did do an AEW versus Impact Wrestling pay-per-view or TV special, what would that look like? I'm not sure. I suppose you have to think, what would the stakes be in that situation? I think the stakes would be bragging rights, I suppose. What does the winning promotion, if they do win on the night, what does that mean? Could Impact Wrestling do an invasion kind of deal when it comes to AEW? And an invasion storyline done right. When we talk about how badly botched the WCW invasion was of WWE, or the Alliance invasion, the WCW and ECW invasion was of WWE back in 2001, maybe they could do something right. I mean, the Invasion pay-per-view itself back in 2001, I thought was a really cool concept and a really well done concept. One of the sort of, I suppose, high points of that whole Alliance invasion storyline that was so badly done. I thought the pay-per-view was a cool concept, and maybe AEW and Impact look at that and go, look, that concept can work. That concept can work. So why not? Why not try and do something like that? It'd be fun. It'd certainly be fun. Certainly be unique. And like I said, what are the stakes? What does the winning promotion win? Well, they're winning bragging rights. And I suppose some people might respond to that and say, well, how come that works? But when it's Survivor Series and it's Raw versus SmackDown last month, you're saying it doesn't work. Well, because there is legitimate loyalty to your company at that point. There is legitimate identity to these two separate promotions, and the wrestlers legitimately are contracted to these separate promotions. Therefore, they would have this loyalty and this desire to actually fight for their company and fight for their pride, as it were, for their company. So that would make sense. So potentially we could see something like that. I don't know. I just think with these Tony Schiavone comments, like I said, there might be something a little bit more underlying there that we could be heading to in the future. 2021, you never know what could happen. Now, speaking of 2021 and the end of 2020, we do have a little bit of also news I wanted to touch on as well, is that Impact Wrestling has announced the holiday schedule for the end of the year. Beginning Tuesday, December 22nd, and concluding on Tuesday, December 29, Impact Wrestling will end their scheduled programming of the year with their Best of 2020 recap episodes. Additionally, they will air their yearly awards show in which fans have the opportunity to cast their vote on which matches and wrestlers were their favourites for the year. Impact will resume their weekly in-ring content on Tuesday, January 5 to build up towards their exclusive event of Genesis on Impact Plus. So far, as I mentioned, when it comes to Genesis, we've had the Willie Mack and Moose match announced, as well as the Super X Cup. We did a video about that as well. We've done a couple of videos about that, so be sure to check those out. When it comes to the January 5th episode, we do have an announcement that Sami Callihan will be facing Eddie Edwards on Impact in a grudge match to settle their 2-year on-again, off-again rivalry. And then, of course, the build is also to Hard to Kill on January 16, which the main event is set as the reformation of the Bullet Club in AEW World Champion Kenny Omega, teaming up with the Impact World Tag Team Champions Kyle Anderson and Doc Gallows to take on the Impact World Champion Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns. We'll also have the finals of the Impact Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournaments at Hard to Kill as well, so a huge pay-per-view event. But it explains these reports that we heard previously that Impact Wrestling have essentially taped all of their content up to the Hard to Kill weekend on January 16. And I think a few people were saying, well, that's a lot of content to shoot. How did they do that? Wow, because these final 2 episodes of the year aren't actually going to air any new original content. That content that's already in the can is going to air in the 2 weeks after the new year, because they're not going to be airing any regular programming for 2 weeks. I suppose a thing you do have to consider with that, does this stop momentum? Does this stop momentum of this whole AEW crossover, of this Kenny Omega appearances? Does this reformation of the Bullet Club, does it stop that momentum? I mean, potentially, and I think that might be a concern for Impact Wrestling. They might think, you know what, maybe it does drop a bit of momentum. Maybe once we come back in the new year, maybe the angle's not as hot. Maybe the storyline isn't as hot. I think the other way to look at that is that the ratings are dropping anyway. The ratings are dropping anyway, and they will drop anyway because of, once we get into that holiday season, the ratings tend to drop for pro wrestling. So I suppose they might be looking at it as the case of, look, the ratings are going to be low over the Christmas period anyway. We might as well go with it. The ratings will be up in the new year. Traditionally, the first episode of the new year always does a good rating for any pro wrestling company, so I think Impact will be no different, especially as they get closer to Genesis and Hard to Kill, especially Hard to Kill. The ratings will be going up. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that they're doing these 2 best of shows. I think they'll probably do terrible in the ratings, quite frankly, unless we have some form of original content, but I highly doubt that. So they're not going to do well in the ratings, which kind of answers my question when I spoke about the ratings a couple of days ago when I said, you know, what are they going to do? Are they going to improve over the next couple of weeks? Well, they're not. They're not, because they're best of shows, and who watches those? So I do agree there is momentum lost, and that is worth considering there, but probably in the long term, considering that the ratings do go up in the new year anyway, it's probably the right call. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Tony Schiavone's comments about Impact Wrestling on Access TV and the Impact Wrestling holiday schedule, including these best of specials? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved with the community and drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.